Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Players Podcast. I'm Joe Pizzuro with Breakchain Capital Investments.
And I'm James Wilson, commercial lender with Old Capital. Today's show, we're going to be talking about cost segregation, and we got a special guest for you, Brian Bigham with Madison Specs. How you doing, Brian?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty good.
Good to have you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So this is one of my favorite topics, and I know investors always are looking to save money on taxes. So we wanted to get we wanted you to share with the viewers, how this works and what benefits they have available.
Yeah, that's good. I don't I'm it's very hard to understand when people say it's fun and taxes in the same phrase. Ultimately, it'll be fun towards the end when they start seeing the actual benefits and the cash flow and the losses, everything like play a part and a role in surviving in the real estate world.
Yeah. Well, before we get started, why don't you just tell everyone about a little bit about yourself and Madison Specs, and then how you guys got started and where you're at now.
Sure, absolutely. So, Brian Bigham, I've been with Madison Specs. Spec stands for Specialized Property Engineering and Cost Segregation. It's a nice mouthful. So we shorten it to Specs. And I've been with them for almost 7 years. Before that, and during the tenure, I've been in real estate in some form or fashion for over 20 years, from management to brokerage to subleasing to maintenance. I mean, you name it, from college until now. I've been in real estate. Um, but I really got into cost segregation almost the exact time that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was happening in 2017, which we'll talk about in a little bit later. The big reason why I got into it was because I didn't know anything about it. I've been in real estate, guys, for over 20 years, and I didn't know anything about what cost segregation, depreciation, any of that stuff was. Once I got into it, it drove me crazy that not everybody knew about this. So it was, an ethical, moral responsibility for myself to make sure everybody knows about it. So that's why I joined up with Madison Specs, and we've been trying to teach the world.
Yeah, hopefully we can teach more today to everybody out
Absolutely.
there. So I guess high level, like how would you explain how it works? Like high level.
High level. Essentially, what you're looking at is any income producing property. Take out the definition of commercial real estate. The idea that we're wanting everybody to know is income producing. It can be a single family rental, short-term rental, massive multifamily, giant office skyscraper, doesn't matter. As long as it's producing income, this is considered the commercial real estate that you can apply depreciation to. Depreciation in general, for those of you that are not entirely familiar with it, is taking the purchase price of the property minus the land value, because land is not depreciable. You have a tornado that knocks the building down, what's left? The land.
Land.
So you can't do anything with that. So when you take that calculation, you're left with what's called a depreciable basis. This basis is what you are getting in depreciation losses over the next 27 and a half, which is the time that IRS put down for residential real estate, or 39, which is the non-residential, like self-storage, retail, office buildings, things like that. So what you do is you take that basis divided by 27.5 or 39, and that's what you get in depreciation losses every single year. The same exact amount, no matter what. No matter if the property is appreciating in value, no matter if you're adding, additional and, the improvement side on it, you're getting that amount every single year. That's called straight line depreciation. So it didn't seem very fair if you've got things like, carpeting or window treatments or ceiling fans. These things, they last, a lot shorter life frame than a roof or a foundation for that matter. When you have a foundation of a building and compare that to the life expectancy of a ceiling fan, do they compare very well with each other?
No.
Exactly. So what you're doing is with cost segregation, you are simply taking all the physical assets on the property, reclassifying them into what their life expectancies are according to the IRS, what their replacement costs are, construction replacement costs. And by doing that, you're essentially moving things for the next 30 years into the first 5 years. You're doubling or tripling the amount of depreciation losses for yourself year over year.
So you're
Now,
taking those items in the property that are have a shorter lifespan, and then you're taking those and putting those at a shorter line than the 27 and a half years, right? And is there, I think there's like 5, 7, and 15 year. Can you go over those differences
Sure.
of
Yeah, so when you're talking about reclassifying the assets, you have to put them into a bucket of, so to speak, a bucket of the life expectancy terms. So what you have is a 5 year category, which means that you're moving everything instead of averaging it out over the, years 1 through 27 and a half, you're moving it into the 1 through 5 year. So that's your tangible property. That's things like ceiling fans, flooring, cabinetry, appliances. These are all things that will depreciate over 5 years. So you put them into years 1 through 5. The second one is 7 year property. Now, typically, 7 year property is owner operated equipment. So you see that a lot more in retail or car washes, things like that. So, like for instance, the deep fryers in a fast food restaurant that can technically be considered owner operated, or laundry facilities inside apartment complexes. If you manage the washer dryers, like you're paying for them, you're leasing them, and you're leasing them to your tenants, then technically you can put those in a 7 year category. So little things like that. And then there's 15 year, and 15 year is your land improvements. And these are things like things added to the land, but not necessarily part of the building structure. Pools, fencing, landscaping, driveways, sidewalks, pergolas. I mean, it's sky's the limit when it comes to what you add to the land. I've seen some crazy things, especially on short-term rental properties. And then, of course, always the bulk amount is going to be your long-term, your structural, 27 and a half year or 39 year. And that it covers essentially foundation, windows, walls, roof. A lot of explanation in one.
yeah. So you mentioned the 2017 Tax Reform Act. I guess remind everybody, or for those that don't know, when does that expire, and how is that looking like this year compared to next year, et cetera?
Oh yeah. Let's get into the government conspiracies, we hope. So essentially, guys, what we're talking about, the 2017 Tax and Jobs Act was it was a big tax cut bill that was put into practice by the Trump administration at the very beginning of the Trump administration. And without taking all of the details on the other side, the other pieces away, the one that we want to focus on is what's called bonus depreciation. So bonus depreciation was simply put that anything from September 2017 and on, and we're still in that today, any property placed into service, if the asset is under a 20-year life, and that's think about all that 5, 7, and 15 year that we were talking about a moment ago. If it's under a 20-year life, you're able to take it into the first year. You don't have to spread it out the 5 year property years 1 through 5, 7 year 1 through 7, and etc. Now, if it's under a 20-year life, you can put it into year one. So what that did was it 10x. It put cost segregation on a steroids. It 10x the amount of depreciation for you on one single property. It maximized every investor's bucket of losses that they could apply, not only to the property they're investing in, but other properties on the side. And it boosted the economy. It made business flow, tremendous at that point in time. Now, the downside is that it the 100% bonus depreciation ended at the end of 2022, December 31st, 2022. Now, each year, 2023 last year, and right now in 2024, the bonus depreciation cap that you're allowed to take drops 20% every year until it's gone. So last year it dropped to 80%. So you could take 80% of the depreciation up front in year one, and the remaining 20% rolls over year after that. Now, 2024, we're in the 60% phase. Now at the beginning, we're talking about conspiracy. Well, there was a bill passed through the House earlier this year in 2024, and it passed very quickly to restart the 100% bonus depreciation, along with quite a few other, pieces added to it. And it went to the Senate, and the Senate went on vacation for 2 weeks. And when they got back, there were so many different bills and additions added on top of that restarting bonus depreciation that it was not passed. And now it's sitting there waiting for who's going to be in the Oval Office in November.
Yeah.
So this year it's 60%, and then next year does it go to 40 and then 20 and then 0?
That's right. Now
Unless there's a bill.
Unless there's a bill that's passed. Now here's a quick piece for you. This is something I'm constantly telling others. If this is the first time you guys have ever heard of cost seg or bonus depreciation, let's say you bought a property in March of 2022. You've taken straight line depreciation for the last 2 years on it. You can still get 100% bonus depreciation for that property and apply it to your 2024 taxes. You could still do that because it's not about when you get the report done. It's about when the property is placed in a service. So there's always backfill and loopholes and all kinds of fun tax pieces. You're right. Taxes are fun to talk about.
Always got to hire an expert.
Is there a rule of thumb that let's say you purchase a property? Is there a way to just back of the napkin for yourself without getting you guys? That's the next step, is getting you guys to give an estimate, but just a rule of thumb for how much you could save through a cost seg study.
So I will tell you, there is a very quick rule of thumb. Back of napkin scenario is, a lot of people will think that you take the down payment amount on a loan for the property. So if you buy a property for $1 million, you take how much you need to put down. Let's say 30%. Well, what was that? 20 years ago. Let's do 50% down. So you need to put $500K down. So basically what you're doing is you're taking the cost segregation, projection of, how much percentage you can reclassify of the entire property. You can do that from me, or you can do that just from kind of take an average of what you see around you, in a sense, like in your underwriting styles. But then you take that percentage multiplied by the down payment divided by ownership percentage. But it gets very complicated because a lot of people, if you're buying it outright as a single investor, it's very, very quick and easy. But if you are involved in a syndication, there are multiple levels of percentages and calculations, and you've got to understand the lending terms, split percentages, land values. Even land value actually will come into play in determining your depreciation amount that you receive based on investment. So ultimately, you definitely, in order to determine exactly how much you're getting in losses, you have multiple factors to have. And that's why, Joe and James, they're the guys to talk to, because you guys know, you get it. You understand the back end. There's more than just taking a down payment multiplied by cost seg. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, is that something you help with too? Is figuring all that, who gets what depreciation?
Absolutely. So this is, I've worked with Joe for a few years now, but one of the things that I'm always trying to make sure everybody understands is, I run these calculations. I break it down per investor. I break it down per property. I want to give as big a solution focused answers to your tax questions when it comes to real estate as I can. And there is no charge for any of this. Like I don't charge a consulting fee. I don't charge an asset fee. I don't charge a meeting fee. Matter of fact, if we go on a meeting, I will most likely pay for that meeting. The the idea is everybody needs to understand in full transparency how much they're getting in losses for every investment dollar. By doing that, you're able to determine, what the property is going to look like now, what the property is going to look like in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You're no longer projecting. You're seeing what you're getting before you put a dollar into your investment in losses. Your strategies open up. You have the ability to find out what you can invest in next year and 2 years because you will see how much you're not going to pay the government. This is one of the best legal ways of screwing the government out of a tip on top of what would be paid to them. And I love it.
Let's talk about, I guess, the backside of that. What happens when like the property sells? Like how does that affect maybe a 1031 exchange or any depreciation that you have to pay back, or how does that work?
Oh, sure. So when you do depreciation, whether it's straight line, cost segregation, or bonus depreciation, what you're doing is those losses you're taking up front, you're holding on to them, you're using what you need and rolling over the rest of the until you sell the property. They're called suspended losses. They stay with you, all right, from now until you sell the property. When you take those losses, you are doing what's called lowering your basis in the property. By lowering your basis, you've got to do a future calculation on the sale. So when you go to sell the property, I'll kind of give a flat example. You bought the property for $1 million. You're selling it for $2 million. When you during ownership, you took, let's say, $500,000, $500,000 in depreciation that you actually used. Like you applied your taxes, you walked away from this property paying zero in income taxes. What that did was it lowered your basis from 1 million to 500,000. Now, when you go to sell it for 2 million, you're selling it on the capital gains hit of 1.5 million. 2 million minus 500,000. So now you will have to pay a slight increase on the sale, but guys, what I was saying earlier, it's all about a 10,000 foot view. You cannot be focusing like a year, 2 years, 3 years, 20 years down the line on the sale, how much you're going to have to pay back in taxes on the sale side. But what you guys were able to keep during ownership that you could apply to other properties to acquire other losses and take those suspended losses that were left from this property, release them on the sale, and apply the losses to the sale. 1031 exchange. When you do a 1031 exchange, you are essentially kicking the can down the road on the tax side. The big key to that is when you kick the can down the road, you're moving the basis that you have left in this property into another property. And you pay no capital gains tax, you pay no recapture tax, you pay no short-term, long-term, whatever taxes on the sale. The downside to that is, even though you're not paying the taxes, you're also not taking any profit out of it in putting it in your pocket. What you're doing is you're moving that to the next property. Now you might be getting a bigger, better, more fantastic income producing property, out of this sale, but you now have lowered your basis. You're getting less in the tax loss side and more on the income side. So that's why we always want to talk about tax strategies during your investments on any property, because you want to continually invest in real estate, continually stockpile those losses so you can offset them in the future on just about damn near anything. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's one thing. And another episode we'll have a CPA explain kind of, how you can't, there's ways you can take those losses and what it applies to, and so we can get into all those details. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but I guess before we have a few minutes left, but what was a message you wanted to share with the audience? Like how do they get a hold of you, or what can you help them out
Yeah.
with?
Okay. So big picture, every real estate property is different. It's not just about, you're not going to get the same exact amount of depreciation on this single family in Texas as opposed to the single family in Florida or New York or Washington State or California, anything like that. Every property is different. Every property has different physical assets that have a different life expectancy to it. The one key piece I want to mention on the multifamily side is multifamily. The reason why, if everybody's hearing cost segregation for the first time because of multifamily, it's because it has extra, what I like to call icing on the cake or cherry on top for it. So, and I'll give you a quick example of that. If you have any questions more, just we can find a time to talk. But you buy a multifamily property, right? You immediately get the straight line or cost segregation or bonus depreciation losses from the purchase. Now, let's say a year and a half down the line, you've added improvements. You're value adding this property. You're adding more and more to it, taking things away and putting something new in its place to increase the value, to increase rents, all of that. Well, hell, that's added assets that you guys get on a second tax year. Now you're going to get the cost segregation, accelerated depreciation on just the improvements and refill your losses to apply. You're going to walk away from a value add multifamily property with not only 10x from upfront in losses, but you're getting 25x because the usually improvements added are always going to be 5, 7, and 15-year assets. So you could be walking away with this property, investing $100,000 and getting 150,000 back in losses. I mean, it's all of this is legit. I've seen it happen in this industry for 7, 8 years now.
Yeah, I've seen a couple deals where it's been like 1.5 or 2x. It's
Well,
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
and how does everyone get a hold of you?
Yeah. You call me, email me, text me. They're trying my company's actually going to be rebranding me soon. I don't know if you can see this. This is what I'm wearing later. The Cost Seg Cowboy.
Oh, I like it.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah. And I've got hashtag Cost Seg Cowboy on just about everything from LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, X. So it's one of the best
I
ways to do
might
it.
get.
It's also very easy to tell people, like, look me up, Cost Seg Cowboy.
That is very easy to find.
I love it.
Yeah. But absolutely, guys. I mean, I know this is like a very quick and a lot of wording, but I try to make sure that everybody, if just to get a basic understanding, I use metaphors, I use calculations. If it's you know based if I when I train CPAs on this, I use tax codes galore. So it's just whatever helps you guys understand it, get a better handle on your underwriting in the future and future syndication work. That's what I love hearing.
James, any last questions for Brian?
No, I thought you did a great job going over all the kind of the high level, and then we got into some details. Definitely learned a bunch today, and appreciate you coming on the show. I think it's going to help people out, and I think Cost Seg is going to be around for a while.
Absolutely, absolutely. If we do another one of these in the future, I will be happy to do like a live property calculation on how an investor how they can put investments in and get losses back on the same property.
Very cool. Let's do it. Thanks everyone for watching, and thanks to the Cost Seg Cowboy.
Well, there you go. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.